Bhagavate uttam shloke bhaktir bhavatir naishtike Omagyantimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Mukham karoti vachanam pangam langyate girim yat kripatamaham vande Shri Gurudeen taranam parmanandam madhavam. Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees. So we are in the beginning part of the instructions in Sankhya by Kapila Muni to Devahuti. So as part of her initial questions / concern that she was suffering from the material affliction of identifying with the self and the body, the aham mameti, Lord Kapila had spoken about the Adhyatmic Yoga. And he spoke about Gyan Vairagya, which is Astang, and Bhakti, and then distilled Bhakti, saying that Bhakti is special. So in the verse, I think it was 28, Devahuti has a follow-up question, that what kind of bhakti should I perform to attain your lotus feet? So she wants details, which is natural, because so far the Lord has introduced us as a concept, and now she wants details because she wants to actually execute it. And then in verse 29, she says that you explain it in a way that even I can understand it. So basically saying that, explain it in a simple way that one does not have to be a big Vedic scholar or has to study for a long time, but one that could be easily understood and practiced. So now from verse 31, Lord Kapila is going to be satisfying the desires of his mother by answering the question that she has asked. So we'll do verse 31. Maitre vacha vidvartam kapiloma vidvartam kapilo maturitam jatsne hayatra tanva bijata tavam nayam yat pavadanti sankhyam prova chavai bhakti vitana yogam. Shri Maitreya said, after hearing the statement of his mother, Kapila could understand her purpose, and he became compassionate towards her because of being born of her body. He described the Sankhya system of philosophy, which is a combination of devotional service and mystic realization as received by disciplic succession. So, Lord Kapila became compassionate. Two reasons are given in this verse. Because he could understand her purpose, that she did not desire wealth or personal happiness or mystic siddhis, but she was genuinely inquiring about the purpose of devotional service, the process of devotional service. And the second reason he became compassionate was because of being born of her body. Now, one might say that why would the Lord be affected by a material connection? And understanding is that not because he was born of her body in a material sense, but because she had the position of being his mother. So she was an advanced devotee with sufficient love for him, because of which he had taken the position of appearing as her son. The Lord cannot appear as the son of anyone. So the fact that she was already an exalted devotee made her very dear to him. The fact that she was sincerely inquiring also made her very dear to him. So he speaks the Sankhya philosophy, and it says Tattva Amanayam. So Tattva Amanayam means with the enumeration of the tattvas, the essential aspects of bhakti. And he also speaks about Yoga Mishra Bhakti, mystic yoga. Yogam, Prabhupada says mystic yoga. And in the translation where Prabhupada says, as received by disciplic succession. So even though he's the Lord and he can anything that he says will be the beginning of the absolute knowledge, but he himself is following what he wants us to follow, which is to only transmit knowledge in a bona fide disciplic succession. Yeah, verse 32. Sri Bhagavan Uvacha Devanam Gunalinganam Anushravika Karmanam Sattva Eva Ekmanaso Vritti Swabhavaki Tuya Animita Bhagwati Bhakti Siddhe Gariyasi. Lord Kapila said, the senses are symbolic representations of the demigods, and their natural inclination is to work under the direction of the Vedic injunctions. As the senses are representative of the demigods, so the mind is the representative of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The mind's natural duty is to serve. When the service spirit is engaged in devotional service to the personality of Godhead without any motive, that is far better even than salvation. So now he's specifically answering the question that Devahuti had asked was about the process. So he first says that this process is beyond the gunas. This is a process that is suitable for the Lord. This is a process that is preferred by the Lord. And this is a process that is exclusively directed towards the Supreme Lord. So he gives the 4 qualifications of the process. That it is not material, it is suitable, it is preferred, and it is one that is exclusively directed towards the Lord. So, Siddhe Gariyasi, that it is better than salvation, this will become a theme in the next set of verses, where constantly bhakti will be compared with liberation and established to be superior to it. So now the point that Kapila Muni is making here is that bhakti is natural. And how does he make that point? He says the senses are representations of the demigods. So we know this because we have studied this in the process of the creation of the universe. That when the Pradhan is being distinguished and distilled amongst the different elements, then the senses appear, and along with the senses, the controlling deities of the senses appear. Like when the eye appears, Surya Dev appears. When tongue appears, Varun appears. Now these demigods are all themselves pure devotees of the Lord. These are not material demigods, but these are the Adi Devas. So their natural inclination is to be working under the direction of the Lord. And even if one were to consider them to be the material demigods, even they have the same inclination. That's how they got the position of the Devas. So because the senses are under the control of the Devas and the Devas are devotees, so the nature of the senses is to follow the inclination of its controller, which is serve the Lord. So Prabhupada makes this point that actually material enjoyment is an artificial imposition. Bhakti is the natural situation. And he writes in the purport that that when the services are ultimately aimed at Krishna, the senses are in the natural position. The Lord is called Rishikesh, for he is the proprietor and the ultimate master of the senses. Rishikesha. So the senses are naturally controlled by the controller of the senses, who is Rishikesh. Then when we look at the verse, then the mind is described as sattva. So first Lord Kapila says that the senses, they are naturally inclined towards the Lord. Then he says, sattva eva eka manaso. So sattva here represents Shuddha Sattva, which represents the personality of Godhead. Ekamansa means that the devotee's mind should accept. So Ekamansa has so this is a verse that is fairly exhaustively commented. It's one of the root verses, so each of the phrases is commented on. So Ekamansa has three meanings, and the first meaning is that the devotee's mind should accept the Lord's form and name with a thought that the Lord alone is the most worthy of service. That is Ekamanasa. The second is that the devotee's mind accepts that bhakti is the only process, does not deviate to jnana or astanga or karma. And the third is that the devotee's mind completely accepts the fact that the Lord has a form, has Ivaika Manasa. So the mind exclusively accepts the fact that the Lord is personal, that the Lord is the only goal that is worth attaining, and bhakti is the only process that can connect. So that's the quality of the mind, and here it's used in both ways. So Lord Kapila is saying that is already the quality of the mind, and all you need to do is to accept that quality. Because similarly, in the case of the senses, he has said that it's already the nature of the senses to serve the Lord. So same point is made here. It's already the quality of the mind to accept the Lord in these three ways. So this is what is known, he says, is Animita Bhagavati. That is bhakti without any material desires. So how do the senses get controlled by the devas participating in this? So the acharyas explain, this is Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, that the actions of the sense devas, the Gyan Indriyas, which are receiving, they will receive the tanmatras, they will receive things like sound, devanam, gunalinganam, only in the context of the Lord. And the karmendriyas, they will only engage in activities directed to the Lord. Further, the point is made that when the word sattva ekamansa is used, while the sattva is translated to mean refer to the Lord, the sattva can also refer to those who are devotees of the Lord. So Vishwanath Chakravarti said this is known as Kakaksi Golak Nyaya. So Kakaksi is crow and Golak is eyeball. So I'm not sure if it is a scientific fact, but at least this Nyaya is based on the fact that the crow has only one eyeball and then it can move from one eye to another as required. So the same eyeball, it acts as the function of seeing in both the eyes. So this Nyaya is used to refer to the fact that the same word can denote more than one meanings. So in this case, sattva can denote both, refer to the Lord and to the devotee of the Lord. So, and the ekamanasa means that one with single-minded attention serves the guru. So they act according to the instructions of the guru. So one may say that how can you make this statement that all the senses can be used in the service of the Lord? What about senses like anus and genitals? And it's quoted in Vishnu Rahasya that because the mind maintains a healthy state by excretion of urine and stool, the anus and urinary organs should be considered as senses engaged in the Lord's service. So even organs, by functioning in relationship to bhakti, are considered to be part of Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti. Then Lord Kapila uses the word tu in the verse to cause differentiation. So he's indirectly indicating that there are, even in bhakti, there are two kinds of bhakti. There is sadhya bhakti as bhakti that is practiced, and then there is spontaneous bhakti, which is ragunag bhakti. So he says, regardless of what kind of bhakti, they're both better than siddha. They're both better than liberation. So Prabhupada and Vishwanath Chakravarti, they comment, and this is, I guess, them just distilling the words of the verses a little bit more, that so the two establishes bhakti of the sadhaka and the ragunag, the spontaneous bhakti. And then he says that spontaneous bhakti is of two kinds. One that is obtained itself through sadhana by following the rules and regulations under the guidance of the guru and the dictates of the scriptures. Such a person is sadhana siddha, and the other is kripa siddha. That because of the mercy of the Lord or the mercy of a devotee in this life or previous life, they attain spontaneous devotion service. So then they make the distinction that Bhava Bhakti that has developed from Vaidya Bhakti has excellence of quantity. And Raguna Bhakti that has matured into Bhava Bhakti has excellence of quality. So in comparing the two, the Vaidya Bhakti is inferior to the Raga Bhakti. So Prabhupada says the conclusion is that when the mind, without being deviated either by the Vedic injunctions or by material activities, so this is spontaneous bhakti, is fully engaged in Krishna consciousness or devotional service with the personality of Godhead, it is far better than the most aspired for liberation from material entanglement. So here Prabhupada is actually talking about spontaneous devotional service being far superior to siddha, to liberation. One reason that Vaidya Bhakti is also talked about here is because at an early stage, Vaidya Bhakti looks like liberation, because the person's motive is to be liberated from different aspects, whether it is distress or material existence. So that's where this point is being made. In the Nectar of Devotion, Prabhupada says that if Brahman, or the happiness of becoming one with the Supreme, is multiplied by 1 trillion fold, it cannot compare to an atomic fraction of the happiness derived from the ocean of devotional service. Now Kapila Muni will next explain that how these superior attachments to the Lord can happen. The Eka Manasa, the single-minded attachment to Sattva, to the personality of Godhead. Verse 33, this is the half a verse. The previous verse was 1.5 verse. Jaratyasu yakasham nigranam manalo yatha. Bhakti, devotional service, dissolves the subtle body of the living entity without separate effort. Just as fire in the stomach digests all that we eat. So the previous verse talked about the superiority of bhakti over liberation. This verse talks about the inclusiveness of liberation within bhakti. So dissolving the subtle body is referring to liberation. So Lord Kapila is saying that it is automatically included in bhakti. And he gives this analogy of, Prabhupada says that the analogy is fire in the stomach can digest whatever we eat, if the digestive power is sufficient. Then whatever we eat will be digested by the fire in the stomach. Similarly, a devotee does not have to try separately to attain liberation. And then he quotes Bilvamangal Thakur, if I have unflinching devotion unto the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord, then mukti or liberation serves me as my maidservant. Mukti, the maidservant, is always ready to do whatever I ask. And Prabhupada illustrates this with a very practical illustration that we can relate to. So he says that one who is aspiring for liberation will try very hard to control the tongue, because part of liberation, aspiring for liberation, is to disengage from the material world. So he'll try very hard to control senses like the tongue. The devotee, they will engage their tongue in eating prasadam and chanting the holy name. So it's automatically controlled. And the result that is given to the devotee is attaining the Lord, which automatically includes liberation. So bhakti is therefore superior to liberation for two reasons. One, it is easy. Two, it includes and is more than liberation. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he further explains this analogy in three different ways. So basically giving more insight into the tattva. So firstly, he says that when one eats, the digestive fire, it destroys that which is useful and processes that which is useful to nourish the body. Similarly, bhakti, it will destroy all that is material and preserve all that can be used in the service of the Lord. So bhakti will not destroy the senses. It will only destroy the nature of the senses to engage in matter. Because the senses are used by the devotees even in the perfected stage. Even as soul, there are senses. So the senses need to be preserved. So he says when the scriptures talk about the destruction of the senses, they're only referring to the destruction of the material aspects of the senses. So this is the first understanding of the analogy of digestion. Second is that when the person eats, then the process of digestion works without him being aware of how it is working. But it does its thing. Similarly, when a person performs bhakti, the process of bhakti works. The person does not have to know the details or be aware of it. Itself, the results are automatically delivered. So that's the second understanding. The third is that when a person begins to eat, the process of digestion begins to act immediately. So actually, the digestion process begins from the mouth when the saliva starts to dissolve the food. So there is no delay. Similarly, when the person performs bhakti, then right from the very first act of devotion, the process begins to act. And what does the process do? It begins to destroy material life in the form of lamentation and illusion. So what it means is that the perfection of bhakti is inevitable, because the bhakti is not waiting for any milestone to be reached, but it will take you to that milestone. And then he makes the same point that the action of the senses for the Lord that are devoid of jnana and karma, devoid of all other desires, which follow the rules of the scriptures, is sadhana bhakti without spontaneity. When it is full in quantity, it is sadhya bhakti. That is the result of sadhana. And when it becomes spontaneous, then it is bhava bhakti. So as bhakti progresses, two things happen. Its quantity increases and its spontaneity also increases. Okay, verse 34. Naikatmatam misparayanti kechin matpad seva birata madiha Yoanto Bhagavataha Parasya Sabha Jayante Mama Paurushani. A pure devotee who is attached to the activities of devotional service, and he always engages in the service of my lotus feet, never desires to become one with me. Such a devotee who is unflinchingly engaged always glorifies my pastimes and activities. So the previous verses describe the qualities of bhakti. 4 verses will now describe the examples of spontaneous bhava bhakti. Previous verses also, they distilled between sadhana and ragunag, between vaidhi and siddhya. So now these verses are really talking about the ragunag bhava bhakti, one who is at a higher platform of spontaneous devotional service. So Lord Kapila is saying that such a devotee, they do not desire impersonal liberation, Savijya Mukti. Same point has been made 2 times, is making it again, that because bhakti is superior to siddha, to liberation, such devotees do not aspire for Sayujya Mukti. Now, a question may be raised over here, that if the devotees are full of happiness, why do they reject the happiness of Brahman? And the answer is given is because they have developed a taste for the higher happiness. And here Lord Kapila gives 3 examples of it. That what have they developed a taste? He says service to the lotus feet of the Lord, then attachment to Krishna Katha, and the third actually comes in the next verse, and appreciation of the Lord's beauty and form. So because they are addicted to this, which are not available in Savijya Mukti, they reject Savijya Mukti. And more generally speaking, because they have a developed attachment to the personal form of the Lord, they have no desire for impersonal. Now, the lotus feet and appreciation of the Lord's beauty and form are personal. One may argue that Krishna Katha could be impersonal also, right? Because after all, there are a lot of discourses that are given by the impersonalists also. But the point that is made is that Katha does not contain any bliss in it. It is simply dry knowledge. But when you're doing Krishna Katha in relationship to the form of the Lord, that bliss is far more superior. Commenting on Krishna Katha, Prabhupada says that Krishna Katha is the factual narration by the devotees, but is unfortunately rejected as myth or symbolic metaphors by the Mayavadis. So this conversion of Krishna Katha to metaphors, it's done by the Vaishnavas also. And it is done in a way to increase one's appreciation of the Lord. Because the fact of life is that metaphors are there for a purpose. We use metaphors in our own lives. That does not make our lives imaginary. So, the Lord being and his devotees being much, much more exalted, there is a natural occurrence of metaphors. But the metaphors that are used by Mayavadis, they serve to dehumanize the Lord. They'll say that Krishna represents the mind of Arjun. So then there is no Krishna. There's only mind. And the Bhagavad Gita is a conversation between Arjun and his mind. So it basically takes away all the potency of Bhagavad Gita, because a person will read it and say that, let me now have a conversation with my own mind, and they will have another Bhagavad Gita going on there. So those kind of metaphors, they tend to destroy the very presence of the Lord. Okay, next verse, 35. I'll do 2 more verses. After that, we'll stop for any discussion. Pashanti te me ruchiranyam vasantah prasanna vaktrarun prasantra vaktraruna lochanani rupani divyani vara pradani Sakham vacham smarniyam vadanti. O my mother, my devotees always see the smiling face of my form, with eyes like the rising morning sun. They like to see my various transcendental forms, which are all benevolent, and they also talk favorably with me. So this verse answers the question that what do the devotees attain from the Lord? So these are those who have already rejected the whole conception of impersonal liberation. So what is it that they attain from the Lord? So 2 verses will answer this implicit question. So Pashyanti. So Pashyanti literally means sees, but in this context it means activities such as hearing, chanting, tasting. Similarly, the word lochanani, rupani, which means seeing forms, is also representative of hearing sounds, smelling the fragrance, touching the deity form of the Lord. And Varapradani, this is the benedictions that are given by the Lord. And what are these benedictions? They are in the form of opportunities to serve, or whatever the devotee wants. Because they typically want service, that's what the Lord gives, but whatever they want. So, so Lord Kapila says that when the devotees approach the Lord, they approach with no material desires, but full of spiritual desires. And the desire is that give me some service, somehow engage me. So Lord Kapila says then the Lord, he reciprocates with them and says, please accept this boon. Please accept this boon in form of this service. So Sridhar Swami comments on it saying that there is superior eternal happiness in bhakti through the realization of the Supreme Lord. So Srila Prabhupada has a fairly extensive purport of this, which I'm going to summarize. So Prabhupada in the purport, he compares, or he really talks about the activities of seeing to deity worship. So Kapil Muni is explaining how the devotees see the decorated body and face of the deity and how they speak with him in devotional service. Srila Prabhupada says that this is actually the interaction of the devotees with the deities. So he makes the following points in the purport, that the Lord mercifully, he accepts the form of Archa Vigraha so that he can be seen by material senses, or he can be experienced. Pashanti is more like experience, so that he can be experienced by material senses. The Archa Vigraha is non-different from him, and the Archa Vigraha forms are not material. Because the Lord is all-pervading, he also pervades the material elements. Now, as soon as the devotees see the Lord in different forms, they become saturated with love, because they do not see any difference between the Lord and the deity form. And this is the difference between the devotees and the atheists. The atheists see the deities as a means to focus their mind, as a mnemonic, as an aid, just like a cripple needs a crutch. They say, since we cannot focus on the infinite Brahman, we focus on the mind, on the deity form, and when our mind is sufficiently expanded, then we reject the deity form. So that's why the acharya, some acharyas, they call the impersonal philosophy as that of prostitutes, because the nature of prostitutes says that as long as they are getting money from a customer, they will entertain them. When they have no need, they will. When the customer has no more money, they will reject the customer. So the impersonal philosophy is that as long as they feel that they're using the deity form to make advancement, they will worship the deity form. But when they feel that they have made sufficient advancement, they will reject it. But on the other hand, the devotees, they do not make any distinction between the Lord and the deity. So the relationship is eternal. As they make more advancement, the distinction between the deity and the Lord becomes lesser and lesser. And Prabhupada gives the example of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, that when he saw Lord Jagannath, he saw Krishna. There was no difference in his mind between the two. Then Prabhupada, he brings the focus to the Guru. He says that it is the duty of the Guru to teach how to decorate the deity in the temple, how to cleanse the temple, and how to worship the deity. Can anybody guess what is Srila Prabhupada referring to here? Yes. He's actually referring to Shri Vigrahara, Dhanna Nityanana, Shringara Tanman, Diru Majranado. I think it's the third verse of the. So, how to worship the deity, Vigrahar, and Shringara Tanman, Mandir Majranado, how to clean the temple, etc. So that's the duty of the Guru. So under the guidance of the Guru, the devotees, they develop this attitude of service to the deities and develop attachment to the deities. And then Prabhupada says something interesting, that now the devotee should go and express their mind before the devotee. So this is the talking part. And in many instances, the deity also gives answers. But one must be elevated in order to be able to speak with the Supreme Lord. And then he says that sometimes the Lord informs the devotees through dreams. These exchanges of feelings between the deities and devotees are not understandable by atheists, but actually the devotee enjoys them. So in Vaishnava philosophy, while we tend to deprecate being excessively emotional, speculative, but we do give importance to the Lord and or devotees or Guru appearing in dreams. And we see so many pastimes where the deity appears in the dream and says something. And like Madhvendra Puri, right? The deity came in the dream and said, I need sandalwood. And then based on that, all the way from the southernmost part of India, he went, he aspired to go all the way till, I believe he was going till Jagannath Puri. I think he stopped in between and returned, because again the deity came and asked him to stop. And of course he's an exalted devotee, but in our own way. If we are fortunate enough to have the deity come and speak to us, a guru come to speak to us, devotees come to speak to us, we should consider it as a manifestation of our spiritual attachment, advancement. 3 verses are given, and I'm in the interest of time I won't read them, but 3 verses are given that talk about the interaction of the devotees with the personal form of Krishna. In the Bhagavatam, Canto 10, verse 55, chapter 55, verses 27-28. Then Brahma Samhita, verse 30, Venam Kvanantam Aravinda. And then CC Antyalila, 1563. So you can look up these verses. Srila Prabhupada, once when he was giving a lecture on this verse in Bombay, actually he was giving a lecture, and he spoke very emotionally about the relationship with the deities. He said that it is not idol worship. The atheist class may say so, but it is not. Those who have got eyes, they can see. Just like when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu entered the temple of Jagannath, immediately he fainted. Oh, here is my Lord, here is my Lord. When you develop that love for Krishna, then you will see immediately and you will faint. Oh, here is my Lord. Somebody was saying to me, it is just like your deity here is trying to talk with me. Yes, he is here to talk with you, but he is waiting whether you are interested to talk with him. That's all. Krishna says, Teisam satata yuktanam bhajatam priti purvakam buddhi yogam tadami tam. This is Bhagavad Gita 10:10. He talks, but with whom? One who is 24 hours engaged with love and faith in the service of the Lord. To whom? Krishna is ready to talk with you. He has come. He has descended in Archamurti to talk with you, to be visible by you. Now you make yourself ready and fit to talk with Krishna. Then he will engage conversation. This is possible. So Prabhupada said this is possible. That means it is something that he will also empower us to do. Okay. So I'll stop over here. The next verse also has a fairly lengthy purport. So I'll stop here and see if we have any discussion points.
While talking about the deity, if you don't mind, I will share my deity video quickly.
Yes, please. I've seen your deities. They're very beautiful.
Yeah.
Jai. What's the name of the deities, Prabhu? I forgot.
Radha Govinda.
Radha Govinda. Radha Govinda ki jai.
Radha Madan Mohan here. And Radha Gopal.
Nice.
And here Nashingade. Of course, and Tulsi Maharani and Guru Parampara. Okay, I take enough of your time. Just wanted to show you.
Do you talk to them every day?
Sorry?
Looks like you talk to them every day, Prabhu. They're
Yeah,
very happy.
we talk to them.
Very beautiful, Prabhu. Thank you for sharing.
So I thought I'd share one thing about devotee couples here, whom I know very well, and they have a Gaurnithai deities, and very good devotees, very strong devotees of temple service and Sankirtan and things like that. And one time the Mataji was woken up from sleep saying that Gaurnithai was in a dream saying that you are leaving me cold. I'm not having any blanket on me. And then they usually put the deities to rest from the altar. They take it out and then put them in the bed and put them the bed sheet or something. And on that day they told her son to do it, and the son forgot. And when she went and saw the deity in the middle of the night, they were standing in the altar, and she felt very it came in a dream and said, you are leaving me cold today. So we just caused me goosebump when I heard that. So I just wanted to share that.
Yeah, there are many wonderful deity pastimes that are inspiring. If you go to Mayapur, there's a Jagannath temple over there, and when they got the deities of Jagannath, so the temple was under the guidance of a local Mahanta, a very nice devotee, and he willed it to ISKCON and left his body. And there was some lack of clarity in terms of the transfer of ownership. So as usual, these things start getting litigated. So Jayapataka Maharaj, he asked them to start worship, but have simple worship, because he wasn't sure whether the temple will stay with ISKCON. So he had one brahmachari living there. He was making something simple and offering. And then in his dream, Radha Madhav came and said that you start feeding Jagannath good prasad. He's coming and eating all our food. So then from that day onwards, then they basically, Lord Jagannath's main worship is through bhog. And they started preparing, and we've gone there. You should see their bhog over there. It's very, very elaborate. And of course, later on, things worked out also. The temple came completely under ISKCON's control. So yes, I think if you're attached enough to the deity, or if you're exalted enough, then the deities will come and talk to you and complain, or because deities are children essentially. That's the mood there. When you have deities, you have the Vatsalya Bhava. You're putting them to sleep, you're bathing them, changing their clothes, feeding them, keeping them nice and clean. So deities generally come, and they'll, you won't see deities coming and saying that, now I give you Vishwaroop Darshan, or now I give you opulences. They'll generally come and say, give me this, give me that. You haven't made rasgullas in a long time. Give me rasgullas. So they have this sweet mood of being, the personality of Godhead being children in your house.
Towards that point, Prabhu, is it not like based on the realization or the conscious, your relationship establishes with the deities?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, that's the point that Prabhupada made in the purport, that if you're sincere in your service, if your desires are not material, if you're steady, then the deities will definitely speak to
Yes.
you. So yes, it's directly predicated on the purity of a relationship. I mean, I would like to, but my deity has never come in my dream or spoken to me. So,
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. I have one question. This is in regards to earlier when you spoke about how bhakti will dissolve the false ego and the subtle body. So then if that happens, but isn't it true that also we are very aware also of every moment where we are acting through false ego? So does it also feel like a conscious effort in addition to, like, here it feels that we shouldn't be even aware, like it's automatically going to dissolve. But I find myself catching myself in every, like, the situation when it happens, you're acting through false ego or trying to be that owner or whatever. So how does that work? Do we also make some conscious effort in order to not be in that position, not be in that doership mentality?
we have so the primary investment of our effort is in the process of bhakti. Now, within this process of bhakti, there are angas that help us in what you're saying, um, getting out of the bodily platform, becoming more spiritually inclined. The point that is made in the verse here is that we don't have to do anything outside bhakti. So we don't have to practice vairagya, we don't have to practice yam niyam. So only those that are offered within the process of bhakti. So like when we are doing sadhana bhakti, then yes, we follow the regulative principles. And the purpose of the regulative principles is to control our attachment to the material conception and more in a enjoying mode. So that's the purpose. We follow it. So we do it because it is an anga of bhakti, but not in itself. We don't follow processes in which, and because we have, at least I have mostly engaged in devotional service, I'm not aware of the other processes. But theoretically, we know that the process of astang and gyan, they have a lot of focus on just this aspect, which is trying to distance yourself from the material conception. So the whole process of advancement, which is material detachment and spiritual attachment, as far as bhakti is concerned, the material detachment is automatically subsumed in the spiritual attachment. We don't strive for it extensively, but as sadhakas we do. We do to some extent. We do practice it as you're pointing out.
Thank you.
Another question regarding impersonalists focusing on the deity form. So in order to focus their mind, and because they cannot focus Brahman, so they want a form to focus their mind. So this it makes me feel that that they implicitly have some faith in the form. Otherwise, why would they focus on deity form? They could focus on any form, but they don't want to address that implicit faith. This is what I was thinking when I heard this. Does it make sense?
They do. They have attachment to the transcendence. So that is what is driving them. But because their ultimate goal is so different, they use the facilities that have been given in a different way. So Krishna has given us all these facilities, right? So when we were doing what was this in the third canto, 6th chapter, we were discussing as to why does Krishna even create the material world? And then we said for two reasons. One was for the souls to enjoy, the conditioned souls to enjoy. And the second, which is the main reason, is for them to purify themselves and become liberated. So if you look at it from the second perspective, everything that is there in this material world is meant for our purification. It's meant for us to make advancement. The senses that we have, the karmendriyas, gyanendriyas, our mind, intelligence, all of these are there to help us make advancement. It's a different matter that we misuse it. So similarly, that's what the impersonalists are doing. That the use that has been given by Krishna to make advancement, but they use it for a different purpose. But you're right. Because they abide by the scriptures, because they have attachment to the transcendence, they do overlap. Ravindra Sarprabhu was saying that it's very difficult to distinguish a Mayavadi from a devotee. For all you know, he's there at the temple, standing right next to you, jumping higher than you, singing kirtan, giving pranam, even chanting, enjoying prasadam. But then in his mind, he's saying, I'm doing all this until I become God. That's the fundamental difference. That a devotee is saying, I'm doing all this until I become the servant of the Lord. So that's the fundamental difference between the two. Externally, he may not be able to discern it. And Ravindra Sarprabhu says that because he himself was in that situation. So initially, when he started going to the temple, he was a very strong impersonalist. And for many days, he was going to the temple in the same mood. That he would take prasadam, offer obeisances to the deities, and chant, everything he was doing. And the devotees were encouraging him. But in his mind, he was saying, I'm doing all this until I become the Lord. And he was saying one day he was having prasadam, and a devotee came to him, obviously inspired by the Super Soul. And he said, pretty much out of the blue, the devotee came to him and said, you can never become God. And he said that was a huge aha moment for him. And he said, I'm coming here because of this reason. And he's saying, I cannot come here. And he said, then I stopped going to the temple. He said, if I can't become God, what's the point in me going to this Hare Krishnas? But then he said, by that time he had already become too attached to chanting and prasadam and Vaishnava Sangha mostly. He said, I still started doing some chanting at home, thinking that will help me. But he had already become attached to devotees and prasadam. And so then he went back. And then, of course, after that, he met Prabhupada. So, yeah, sorry for the long answer, but I do appreciate the point you're making.
Prabhu, I never think like what you said. Everything in this world is meant for purifying us. Even now I'm adding, even the bad thing, we use them and abuse them and until we get disgusted and burned. And then we see it's not appropriate. We're not getting any happiness out of it. Very true what you said.
Yeah. In the previous verse we saw, right, when Lord Kapila said that, or in the purport, the Acharya said, that even the anus and genital, one would think that how are they be using? They're using because they're cleaning the body. They're cleaning the body, purifying it so that it can be used. So we'll study this in a subsequent chapter. I'm not sure which chapter, but one of the potencies of Maya Devi is Vidya. Even though we always think of her as Avidya, but one of the potencies is Vidya. In the Bhagavatamritam, when the Gopakumar is exiting the material world, then the outermost covering of the material world is under the domain of Mayadevi. And Mayadevi, he has this conversation with Mayadevi, and then she says that initially she tries to misdirect him, saying that take this opulence, take this, and he keeps saying no, no, no. And then she becomes very happy, and then she says that, for you to go back to the spiritual world, I am there to help you. And then in the commentary, Gopi Parandan Prabhu writes that this is the Vidya aspect of Maya. That she is not there just to delude us, but when the devotee is sincere, she is there to inspire the devotee.
Could you give those references again, Prabhu, regarding the deity worship? You said Chaitanya Charitamrita, Antya Leela, and a couple of other things.
Antya Leela, let me give it to you again. Chaitanya Charitamrita. So it's Bhagavatam 10:55, verses 27 and 28, Brahma Samhita 5:30, and CC Antya 1563.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. One question, Prabhuji. Sankhya philosophy is synonymous to Bhakti, Prabhuji, because I was thinking it is neti neti and finally there is the stage of understanding the spirit soul. But here, Kapil Dev is telling that my devotees always see my smiling face of my form with eyes like that. Very sweet description of the Lord, and the personal form of Lord is described.
Right. So what would your conclusion be, Prabhu?
I am asking Prabhuji, so is my understanding, so Sankhya is direct devotional service only? So
Sankhya, it distills everything to the exclusion of devotional service. So there is another Sankhya, the Neti Neti that you're talking about, there is another Sankhya. We discussed this when we started the discussion on Lord Kapila. So there is another Kapila who spoke another Sankhya, and Prabhupada says that he is the atheistic Sankhya, and he is the Neti Neti, that not this, not this, not this, and basically he denies. I don't think he's even impersonalistic. I think he is atheistic. He does not even accept the presence of God. But based on what we have been reading so far, it should be pretty clear that Lord Kapila, as part of his philosophy, is distilling the glories of bhakti from the various aspects of engagement.
Yes, Prabhuji. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Okay. So we'll do...
Prabhu, sorry. I just wanted to ask that, you had given, talked about digestion and bhakti. And the very first point you said was, in digestion, it breaks, destroys things down, and the useful things are absorbed. Similarly, you said the senses are not destroyed because they can be used in service of the Lord. Is that the full thing, or am I missing something in that first point?
That was an example that was given. So from the digestion point, that part is clear. You eat something, and the process of digestion takes that is useful and discards that is not. So the example that is given is the senses, that the process of bhakti will discard the material absorption of the senses and will restore the spiritual engagement of the senses, as it will do in other things also. That there are so much, so the way that we have our desires, the activities that we do, our aspirations, the process of bhakti will distill it. And this is something that even we can experientially feel, that maybe we are not very advanced devotees, But we see that bhakti is already acting on us in this way. And Srila Prabhupada gives the example of prasadam, that maybe if we were not devotees, we would have a lot of attraction to eating. As devotees, we eat prasadam. So the sense is not denied, but it is basically connected to the spiritual aspect. Okay, so let's move on to verse 36. Te darshane yavayaveruda vilas hasiksita vamashukte hritatmanohrita pranamscha bhakti anichato migatim anavim prayumte. Upon seeing the charming forms of the Lord, smiling and attractive, and hearing his very pleasing words, the pure devotee almost loses all other consciousness. His senses are freed from all other engagements, and he becomes absorbed in devotional service. Thus, in spite of his unwillingness, he attains liberation without separate endeavor. So this verse continues to glorify bhakti, especially in contrast with mukti or liberation. So this verse is considered to be important, and there are several nuances of interpretation that are given by various acharyas, which talk about the relative superiority of bhakti. So the four that are summarized, and this is an increasing order. First is by Rupa Goswami, that bhakti makes the mind of the devotees who do not desire liberation attached to the pastimes of the Lord. So these are people who never had a desire for liberation. And when they take to bhakti, they become attached to the pastimes of the Lord. The second understanding offered by Jiva Goswami and Sridhar Swami is that bhakti offers them liberation, although they do not desire it. So this is quite straightforward. The third, which is offered by Srila Prabhupada and Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, is that bhakti offers them liberation whether they are qualified for it or not. It's talking more about the increasing order of the potency of bhakti. And the fourth, which is again talked about by Srila Prabhupada and Vishwanath Chakravarti, is that bhakti makes them lose the desire for liberation. It drives away the desire for liberation. So keeping the first aside, that it makes the mind of the devotees who do not desire liberation attracted to the Lord, let's look at the next three. So bhakti offers them liberation, although they do not desire it. So why does this happen? Why do they not desire it? Because they have developed a distaste for merging into the Brahman. And because they have, and again the focus here goes to the deities, and because they have developed attraction for the deity form of the Lord. So when they look at the deity, they think the deity is looking back at me. When they smile at the deity, they think that the deity is smiling back at me. And they will sit and talk about the pastimes of the deities. So for such people, mukti, or the personification of liberation, will come and say, "O devotees, please accept liberation in the Brahman." But the devotees are so absorbed in interacting with the deities that they do not even hear these words. So one may say that if the devotees are not attracted to liberation, then why does bhakti even offer mukti? This point is made later on. Then why does it even offer mukti? And the explanation that is given by Jiva Goswami here is that a person who can give chintamani, that can create unlimited diamonds and rubies and sapphires, will first make a show of giving gold. And this is so that the foolish who desire only gold do not create a disturbance amongst those who have no desire for gold. So a more metaphorical way of saying that, it is a way to screen out those who are not purified enough. So bhakti offers mukti. For those who take mukti, they take the exit ramp at that point. But those who have developed taste for bhakti, they simply ignore that offering. The third point that is made is that even if the person is not qualified to receive liberation, bhakti will offer liberation. And Prabhupada says that simply by fixing oneself in Krishna consciousness, engaging the senses in the service of the Lord, one is imperceptibly liberated. So imperceptibly means without knowing. Perception means that you know. And imperceptibly means that you don't even know it and you are liberated. And Prabhupada says that this is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita, that simply by discharging uncontaminated devotional service as prescribed in the scriptures, one becomes equal to Brahman. Brahma bhuyate kalpate. This is Bhagavad Gita 14:26. Mam chaiva vicharena bhakti yogena sevate. And in the purport, Srila Prabhupada, he gives special focus to the 5 most potent aspects of bhakti. This we studied in the Nectar of Devotion. And he said that even a third-class devotee is liberated. So third-class devotee is who? One whose faith is weak and one whose knowledge is weak. So even a third-class devotee is liberated if his mind is fully absorbed in these 5 aspects of bhakti. And Prabhupada, he links these 5 aspects to practices. So he says that one who is addressed to Nam, Roop, Gun, Leela, and Seva. So Nam is chanting, Roop is deity worship, Guna is Bhagavatam, Leela is Vrajvas, and Vaishnav Sang is Vaishnav Seva. So Nam, Roop, Gun, Leela, and Vaishnav Seva. So I found this very interesting that generally we speak about the 5 potent aspects of bhakti as chanting the holy name and deity worship and reading of the Bhagavatam, reciting in a holy place and serving devotees. But we see that why are these 5 potent? Because these are the 5 aspects of the deities. That Nam, Roop, Gun, Leela, and Seva. And there are also the 5 aspects of Krishna Bhakti. That we worship Krishna through Nam, Roop, Gun, Leela, and Seva. Through the Nam we get Roop, and through Roop we get Gun, and through Gun we get Leela Smaran in the association of Vaishnavas. The 4th meaning was that Bhakti makes them lose their desire for liberation. So even in a neophyte devotee who may have had desires for liberation because of two things, because of the sweetness of bhakti and because of the purificatory effect of bhakti. The person loses all desires for liberation. And again, this is something that we can experientially attest to also. That we are definitely in the neophyte stage, but very few of us are desiring Brahma Nirvana. Right? That desire is just not there. Not because we are already transcended the stage of Brahmavadis. We haven't. We are not even Atmavadis. We are very much in the stage of being conditioned. But because of these two things, because of the sweetness of bhakti, and because of the imperceptible effect, the purificatory effect. So these are attributing a successively greater prowess to bhakti. That even in neophytes, it drives away the desire for liberation. In the ones who are a little bit more advanced, it gives them liberation even if they are not qualified to do that. So if we combine all these understandings, then one gets a very exalted picture of the potency of bhakti. That bhakti can offer liberation even before the persons realize the full happiness with the Lord. Bhakti can offer them liberation to experience the happiness of Brahman. And most of all, bhakti can pull them out of liberation and drown them in the ecstasy of devotional service. This point will be made in the next verse also. So we have noticed that in the previous verse, Srila Prabhupada had spoken extensively about devotional service. In this, in the purport of this verse, Prabhupada, he strongly directs us to hearing Shastra in addition to our performance of deity worship. So he says that the prescribed duty in temple worship, that not only one should visit the temple to see the deity nicely decorated, but one should at the same time hear the recitation of Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, or similar literatures which is regularly recited in the temple. It is a system in Vrindavan that in every temple there is recitation of Shastras. Even third-class devotees who have no literary knowledge or no time to read the Bhagavatam or Bhagavad Gita get the opportunity to hear about the pastimes of the Lord. In this way, the minds may remain always absorbed in the thought of the Lord, his form, activities, and transcendental nature. The state of Krishna consciousness is a liberated stage. Lord Chaitanya therefore recommended 5 important processes in the discharge of devotional service. And these are the 5 processes that we speak about. Okay, so I'll do one more verse. I wanted to finish the chapter, but these verses are a little bit deep. At least that's what the Acharyas revealed. So verse 37. Atha vibhutem mama maya vinasta aishwaryam astangam anupravratam shriyam bhagavatim vasparayanti bhadram parasya me tu snuvate tu loke. Thus, because he is completely absorbed in thought of me, the devotee does not desire even the highest benediction obtainable in the upper planetary system, including Satyalok. He does not desire the 8 material perfections obtained from mystic yoga, nor does he desire to be elevated to the kingdom of God. Yet, even without desiring them, the devotee enjoys, even in this life, all the offered benediction. So, previous verses were talking about the superiority of bhakti over jnana, which offers liberation. This verse talks about the superiority of bhakti over karma, which offers material appearances, elevation to swarga, and also superiority over Astanga Yoga, which offers mystic powers, elevation to the even higher planets like Satyalok, etc. So, in the Uddhav Gita, Krishna tells Uddhav that everything that can be obtained, that can be achieved by fruitive activities, penance, knowledge, detachment, mystic yoga, charity, religious duties, and all other means of perfecting life, is easily achieved by my devotee through loving service unto me. If somehow or other my devotee desires promotion to heaven, liberation, or residence in my abode, he easily achieves such benedictions. So just as bhakti includes mukti, it also includes bhukti and siddhis. So the opulence of living in heavenly planets or the mystic powers of the yoga, these are all experienced by the devotees living in the planet of the Lord. So it's not that once the devotees become surrendered to service, they live a very austere life, and they're just serving in a miserable condition. But actually, the bhukti that they're enjoying is a lot more than what is available in heavenly planets. And the mystic powers that they have far exceeds that of even Brahma. So those who perfect the devotion, all this is automatically available to them. Whether they use it or not is different. Whether they care for it or not is different, but it is there. It is there for them. So the further point is made that all the happiness within the universe consolidated by Maya after the destruction of the ignorance, and all the happiness of the process of yoga follows bhakti. So the word anu is used, that it is following bhakti, which means that bhakti is more than that. So anu also means that, so do not. So it also means that the devotees do not desire the wealth of even Vaikuntha, such as the Bhagavatam Shriyam. They do not desire the bliss of the Brahman. And though they do not desire it, the Lord still offers it to them. So the point that will be made by Lord Kapila is about not just the superiority of bhakti, but the all-inclusiveness of bhakti. So he first established that bhakti was superior, but now he's establishing that it is all-inclusive. Everything that can be offered by any other process, material, spiritual, meditation, mystics, anything that is offered by any other process is automatically offered within bhakti. Okay, so we'll stop over here, and I am actually over time, but if somebody has any comments, we can take them.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Regarding the verses that we saw so far, 3 verses. The first one, Kapil Dev speaks in the first person. Those who see me smiling face and things like that. And the second verse that you just finished before this one, he spoke in the second person. He refers to God, him, and like that. himself. And the third verse that just we spoke, we saw, again he comes back to the first person, he referring to himself. So it's kind of back and forth, and is there any significance to it? Any?
There is no particular thing, because we see that in the Bhagavad Gita also, that Krishna will say that you surrender unto him, and then at some point he will say surrender unto me. So he sometimes talk about it in first person, and sometimes talk about it in third person. No particular significance. I actually asked this question once, so that's why I can give you the answer to this. If at all, it basically demonstrates the adherence to the scriptures, like Krishna saying that as has been spoken in the parampara, which means that he's adhering to it. Now, if Krishna keeps saying, me, then it's basically Krishna's word. But when he says him, then he's referring to he who has been spoken about in the scriptures. So it's basically indicating the adherence of whatever. Now, Krishna doesn't have to do it, but he still does it, that whatever I'm speaking is the personality that I'm speaking about is also the same personality that the scriptures speak about. And then he goes to third person.
Thank you, Prabhu. And there's one more thing I was thinking about. The liberation, though we spoke about different kinds of devotees who are not interested in liberation, and my understanding is that it does not include those who are materialistically inclined and going to Krishna for material benedictions, and they are also not interested in liberation either. So, does it refer to them, or it's nothing to do with them?
At least in this context, it's talking about those who have developed a desire for liberation. Now, this verse talks about bhakti, but previously it was comparing it with mukti, that those who have a desire for liberation. So those who are materialists, they don't even have that desire. That does not put them on the same platform as devotees, because their lack of desire for liberation is coming from a different source, because they have a desire to enjoy materially. So even though symptomatically they may look the same, but their conception is completely different. So those words are essentially talking about the muktivadis, those who are seeking liberation from the material existence.
Thank you.
Okay. So we'll end over here. Thank you. Vanchakalpatarupayascha kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrinda ki jai. Shila Prabhupada ki jai. Thai Gaur Premanande. Hari Hari Bol.